Hi guys, so in this video I'm going to be talking about my top 15 favourite movies from 2002. These are all in accordance with the release dates from IMDb, and again, these are just my personal favourite top 15 films from this year. There's no right or wrong to it, it's just completely subjective. So yeah, that being said, I'm going to get straight into it and kick it off with a few honourable mentions I've got from 2002. So the first one I want to give a shout out to is Orange County with Colin Hanks and Jack Black. This was just a really funny movie following Colin Hanks' character, who's basically just trying to get in to this university, but everything just keeps going wrong. And I just really enjoyed it and thought it was quite funny. Next honorable mention for me is Joel Schumacher's Phone Booth. Really good movie from Joel Schumacher. Got a lot of shit for the Batman movies, but outside of that, he did make some really competent movies like this one and Falling Down on the Lost Boys. Next honorable mention for me is Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later. Just a fantastic modern day zombie movie. Really somber and really got this mellow sort of atmosphere to it. The shots of London at the beginning of the film are just really creepy, that, you know, this deserted capital, but didn't quite make the list for me. Next honorable mention for me is Secretary, just this really sort of scarily sexy film with James Spader and Maggie Gyllenhaal. Next honorable mention is The Hours, fantastic drama with a stellar cast, this, and pretty much an unrecognisable Nicole Kidman. But yeah, great to see Julianne Moore and Meryl Streep in there as well. Next honourable mention for me is Infernal Affairs. This, of course, is the original version of The Departed, which Scorsese made, which is what some people debate to be the better film. I agree. I think it's that rare occasion where the remake's better than the original, but that is saying that it's nothing to take away from this film. It's still pretty good. Next up for me is A Walk to Remember with Mandy Moore. I thought this was a really good, competent, well-made little sort of romantic film. Just really harmless, but really enjoyable. Next up for me is John Q with Denzel Washington. Great sort of heist movie. This is about Denzel Washington, who his son becomes really ill and needs a heart transplant. But things just go a bit wrong, and he ends up sort of taking hostage this hospital for the right reasons. Next honourable mention for me is Bubba Hotep. This was just a crazy concept. Starring Bruce Campbell. I just thought this movie was absolutely insane, but absolutely so enjoyable at the same time. Next honourable mention for me is Simone with Al Pacino. Quite an underrated film in my opinion. It just stars Al Pacino as this guy who works in movies, but he creates this actress that everybody falls in love with, and she starts winning awards, but she's not real, and it just escalates, and he keeps finding himself getting deeper and deeper into the hole he's dug for himself. But yeah, it's not by no means it's not a perfect movie, but it's still really enjoyable and good fun. My last honourable mention is Punk Drunk Love by P.T. Anderson. This was just a great drama film, and great to see Adam Sandler give a sort of serious, straight-faced role for a change. Not that I don't enjoy his comedies, but this was just a complete change of pace for him. So there are my honourable mentions from 2002, so I'm going to kick it off with my main list now. And at number 15 for me is the film that won Best Picture this year. That is Chicago. This is kind of a Marmite movie with some people. You either love it or you hate it. It's a musical as well. The same thing. You either love or you hate them. but I really, really dug it. It's sort of like about these two women who are in prison for murder, and this lawyer played by Richard Gere, who just is really sort of infamous for winning cases, even though the people he represents are guilty, but he just is really renowned for getting them off. But yeah, I massively enjoyed it the second time round. I didn't really rate it or care much for it the first time, but watching it again for the purpose of this video, I really dug it. I thought it was quite enjoyable. So coming up next to me at number 14 is Roman Polanski's The Pianist. This is probably a movie that a lot of people would have a lot higher on their list. It's a proper film, proper well-made film by Polanski. Adrian Brody took home the Best Actor Oscar. Really dark capture of the Nazis, this film. Just some really great, gripping, uncomfortable, tense scenes. This is pretty much up there in terms of that with Schindler's List for me. You know, Schindler's List is like an absolute masterpiece, but this is very close to it and not far behind. But yeah, I just thought this movie was fantastic and very well made and very well acted. So at number 13 for me is City of God. Again, another film that most people would rank higher on their list. It just is this really great, gritty gang movie that takes place in Brazil. It's so grounded and as I said, so gritty and realistic in what it does. It just engages you completely with its characters. There's one scene that is my particular favourite where a murder takes place at this nightclub. And it's just so eerie and so engaging to watch. Again, it's just a well-made film as well. It just looks absolutely beautiful and superb. Coming up next to me at number 12 is probably a film that most people would turn their noses up at, and it's M. Night Shyamalan's Signs. This again is a movie that divides a lot of people, and I completely understand why. The plot is convoluted and flawed. Absolutely it is. But to talk about that is to get into spoilers, which I won't do. But what I really enjoy about this film is the parts of it that work. It is creepy and it is scary in parts. It really is. That there's a scene which is like some found footage that takes place at this kid's party, where we actually see one of the aliens, and that scene still makes me jump and shit myself. It did when I was about 11 years old when I went to see this film at the cinema. It was just terrifying. I know one scene doesn't make a great movie, but the movie is sort of peppered with scenes like that throughout it. It's great casting of Mel Gibson and Joaquin Phoenix as these two brothers. And the two kids that are Mel Gibson's, you know, he's sort of like a priest who's given up his faith because his wife's died. And he owns this farm, and he just starts to get these crop circles on his farm. And the aliens sort of invade his home. But I just thought it works. What works about it is the creepy factor and the scary scenes. That's absolutely there. But the ending is very weak and convoluted and doesn't really make sense. But yeah, that doesn't dent it for me. I still get enjoyment, and I still think it is a good film, and I'll give it the merit for those good elements that it has. So next for me is The Bourne Identity, coming in at number 11. Now, brief history with me and the Bourne films. was basically on this school trip and we had to watch Bourne Supremacy. Now, if you haven't seen Bourne Identity and you're going into Bourne Supremacy, you're not going to like it. I certainly didn't. I felt like as if I was just reading the middle of a book that I hadn't started. It was just so strange and disinteresting. This is a film series where you need to watch them in order to get any sort of enjoyment or take anything from them. But this one for me was great. It stars Matt Damon as Jason Bourne, who pretty much wakes up. He doesn't remember who he is. And it turns out there's a lot of sort of people after him. I won't get too much into the plot, but I thought this had a great cast and a great story and some great action sequences. You've got Julia Stiles, Chris Cooper, Clive Owen, and Matt Damon himself. I just really dug it and really enjoyed it, and I'm glad I gave the series a second chance, because pretty much Bourne Supremacy pretty much takes place pretty much straight after this one. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about it. It's just a great action film. So at number 10 for me is Christopher Nolan's Insomnia. Great performances here from Al Pacino and Robin Williams. I find this film to be probably Christopher Nolan's least pretentious film. This feels like a proper film. You wouldn't if you watched this film and didn't know who directed it, I don't think you'd really say it was Christopher Nolan. But yeah, this was just a creepy crime movie that I absolutely loved, and it was great to see Robin Williams sort of branch away from the comedic roles and do something a lot more serious. Al Pacino, Hilary Swank, absolutely superb in the film as well. That's all I really have to say about it, because I don't want to get into too much detail about it, but it's a wonderful film. So, coming up next for me at number 9 is Martin Scorsese's Gangs of New York. Not a film I enjoyed the first time I saw it, but the second time I appreciated it a hell of a lot more. I don't know if anyone else remembers this, and you could probably tell me the reasoning for it, but when this film first came out, I remember at the marketing it was certified as a 12, not an 18, and then for some reason it just shot right up to an 18er, and I don't know why. I don't know if it was because of some of the scenes in the finished film were cut and added to it later. But yeah, it's just a great brutal film with a fantastic cast. Daniel Day-Lewis is just firing at all pistons in this film again, as he does, height of his powers. He's never really given a shit performance, to be fair. He's absolutely brilliant. DiCaprio as well. Cameron Diaz. Brief performance in it as well from Liam Neeson. Brendan Gleeson as well. I just love how brutal this is. I love how brutal Bill the Butcher is. How much of a ruthless guy this is, and you just do not want to get on the wrong side of. But yeah, it's one that definitely grows on me the more and more I watch it. It wasn't my favourite Scorsese film. It still isn't by any means, but I think this was a great platform for the partnership of Scorsese and DiCaprio. This is just a great starting point for them, pretty much. But I'll get into another DiCaprio film a bit later on, that I just enjoyed a little bit more than this one. But as I said, this one is definitely superb, and it's well worth checking out. So, coming up next for me at number 8 is Sam Mendes' Road to Perdition. This was just another great sort of low-grounded gangster movie with a fantastic cast that I absolutely loved. Didn't like it the first time I saw it, but I just thought it was absolutely superb. Tom Hanks, Paul Newman, Jude Law, bit of a sort of an early performance as well from Daniel Craig in it as well. I just absolutely loved it. One particular scene I enjoyed as well is where Jude Law's this sort of photographer. He's taking a picture of this this corpse, but it's still alive, and it just, because he's still alive, it's ruining his shot, and he's just looking at it like really pissed off. But yeah, it's just so gritty and so fantastic, this film. I fully recommend it. It's got a great third act to it as well that I was just riveted by and absolutely drawn into. So at number 7 for me is Spielberg's Minority Report with Tom Cruise. I think this is a little bit of an underrated film. It doesn't really get talked about too much when people discuss sort of like the best Tom Cruise movies. So the premise is quite brilliant actually. It's pretty much set in the future, and there are these precogs that foretell the future, and they're used to basically foresee murders that'll take place for this police force, and the police force prevent the murders from actually happening. And of course the plot thickens when one of the murders that the precogs foretell involves Tom Cruise, and that is basically where the film takes off and gets going, and just starts running then at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and Tom Cruise is just on the run, and the film is basically just one big chase. But it's absolutely fantastic. The special effects in it are brilliant. I love the sort of like the creepy scenes with those like sort of little metal spiders that scan your eyes. And there's a bit where Tom Cruise has this operation to have his eyes changed, and he can't see, and where he's staying, the guy said, there's like sandwiches and milk in the fridge, and he ends up picking up all the mouldy shit, and it's just, it's so gross. But yeah, as I said, it's a fantastic Spielberg movie. Both an underrated gem, I think, for Spielberg and Tom Cruise, but it's one I really, really loved and fully recommend. So, coming up next for me at number 6 is actually another Spielberg film, and this is the other DiCaprio film I was talking about as well. And it's Catch Me If You Can, with DiCaprio and Tom Hanks as well. So the premise to this is basically DiCaprio is a fraudster. I don't really want to say con man, but he's definitely basically he does lie to get ahead. And he's wanted by the FBI, and Tom Hanks is leading the chase for him. And the movie is basically one big chase. You sort of kind of root for DiCaprio, as wrong as it is what he's doing. Bit similar to Wolf of Wall Street, but yeah, the movie's just riveting, and it's got absolute powerhouse performances. I love that speech by Christopher Walken, who plays DiCaprio's dad in the film, about the two mice. Again, it's another underrated Spielberg film for me, and it's just a fantastic chase film. It just keeps you absolutely riveted, and I just really, really dug it and thought it was so much fun. So, coming up next for me at number 5 is another Robin Williams film, and that is 1 Hour Photo. This again was another one of those films similar to Insomnia that gave Robin Williams a lot to work with, and again branch away from the comedic stereotype performances that he did. And I just really, really enjoyed this. I thought it was so suspenseful and so terrifying in places. It basically follows Robin Williams, who works at this supermarket, and he works in the photography department, and he develops all these pictures. And what he secretly does is there's a family that comes to him all the time to get their pictures done, and he keeps copies of all of their pictures that they bring, and he keeps them at his house, and he pretty much just plasters them all over the wall, because he wants to try and see himself as part of their family. And then eventually he discovers a secret about that family, which just completely sets him off and absolutely upsets him, and he just goes off the chain and off the hook. And it's got some absolute scary as fuck imagery in this film, where particularly one scene where he sort of has this nightmare and his eyes bleed. It's just horrifying. But I won't spoil the ending, and I won't spoil what that secret is the family has. But yeah, it was just riveting and, again, fantastic. Wonderfully acted as well. And yeah, it's one of Robin Williams' best, in my opinion. So, coming in at number 4 for me is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Now again, you either love or you hate Harry Potter. The second film, I'm not going to talk too much about the plot. If you've seen the film, you know it. It's great to see these characters again back from Philosopher's Stone, and we get to see new characters as well. We get to see the Weasley's dad. We get to see the Malfoy's dad. It was just a great advancement for me on telling the next chapter of this saga. The movie's really long as well. It comes in close to about 2.5 hours. I think it's like one of the longest Harry Potter films, but I didn't feel that for a second watching this. The movie just flowed completely for me. Another character I really enjoy in this is Kenneth Branagh's Gilderoy Lockhart, who's the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. I won't spoil what it is with his character, but you can pretty much tell from the off there's something up with him. It's not all as it seems, but I sort of called it even when I was a young 10, 11-year-old who saw this film for the first time. I kind of sort of picked up on it, but yeah, the film's great. This is another one of those films that knows when and when not to use CGI. There's a great blend of this of CGI with the practical effects in this. I think one of the best practical effects in this is probably the use of how they did Aragog, the giant spider. It just looks absolutely great and terrifying. And I actually got to see the prop of that when I went to the Harry Potter Studios tour. And I'm just absolutely terrified of spiders, and seeing that in person was quite something. But yeah, it's a great film, this, and it's a massive family pleaser. Directed by Christopher Columbus, back again from the first one, and these two films just feel the same tone because they have the same director. The third film, for me, just the tone of it just went too far. It was just so evident that that film was directed by a new director, and it just made me. It just took me out of the saga a little bit, which is my main flaw with the saga. It was just too inconsistent with tone when they changed directors. But yeah, this one is a must. If you don't like Harry Potter, you're not really going to enjoy this film. There's no point watching this one if you don't. There's no point watching a Harry Potter film if you aren't interested or invested in the saga. But I am, and I enjoyed this one massively. So yeah, that's why it's my number 4. So my number 3 pick is Sam Raimi's SpiderMan. I've got this as part of a trilogy. This was just an absolute fun comic book movie. I know that Hollywood had been trying to get a Spider-Man movie off the ground for quite some time. There were a lot of names attached. I think James Cameron was attached at one point. And for whatever reason, it landed with Sam Raimi, and he just gave us an absolute enjoyable film. It's silly, it's goofy. Willem Dafoe is just so mesmerising to watch. Tobey Maguire is great as Spider-Man. Kirsten Dunst, great as Mary Jane, and James Franco as Harry Osborn. Yeah, yeah, it's a great origin film as well. It's great to sort of see Spider-Man and Green Goblin on the screen together. I'm not a fan of how Green Goblin looks in this film, which is quite surprising because if you see some of the original artwork of what they had planned, it looks so much better to what instead of what they actually went with. But it's a goofy series. It's got two very good first films. The sequel's probably better than the original. This is a very unpopular opinion, but I actually like Spider-Man 3. It's got some good things in there, but it did go a step too far with the goofiness, in my opinion. But I still really enjoyed it. But getting back to the first film, it's just great fun. It's great fun. It's a movie you can just sort of turn your brain off and just really, really sit back and enjoy. And yeah, that's what I got from it. That's what I get from it every time I watch it. It's just a great entertaining movie. So coming up at number 2 for me is Equilibrium with Christian Bale. Now, I'm going to say this off the bat. I think this film lives in the shadow of The Matrix because of how it's stylized. It's stylized very, very similar. And it's a shame because it's almost underrated, this film, I think. It just lives in that shadow of The Matrix because The Matrix was so unique at the time that I think some films are trying to copy it. But this film, in its own right, is still fantastic. The premise to it is really, really straightforward. We're told off the bat that there was a World War III that took place and mankind literally could not survive if a World War IV broke out. So what happened was a drug was made to suppress every sort of emotion that humans have, pretty much. All forms of art were just completely banned and destroyed, where you just sort of live in this robotic future. Pets aren't allowed, paintings aren't allowed, music's not allowed, books aren't allowed. And if you get caught with any of these things, you're to be executed straight away. Getting into the cast as well, Christian Bale's absolutely great. Sean Bean, absolutely great. We start off with Christian Bale and Sean Bean, who basically play these two officers who have to execute people who basically break the law and don't take the drug and start to defy this sort of leader who's put these rules in place, pretty much. And what starts to happen is Christian Bale starts to stop taking the drug and basically wants to break free from this manufactured society. It's just absolutely fantastic. As I said, Sean Bean's in this. You can probably guess what happens to him. It's Sean Bean. But yeah, as I said, I just think this is a fantastic action movie as well. A great scene that sort of tugged at my heartstrings a bit, involving this scene where Christian Bale discovers these puppies. If you love dogs, it's going to break your heart. But yeah, this is a great, great action movie, and I think it's underrated and underseen. And I just think it's absolutely superb, and that's why it's my number 2. So, my number 1 pick from 2002. If you saw my number 1 pick from last year, and if you can remember what that was, it is again. It's Lord of the Rings. The Two Towers. This film picks up straight away after the first one. Peter Jackson's second in his masterpiece of making the Lord of the Rings films. We basically pick up where the Broken Fellowship left off, and we then follow all these different characters in their different situations, in their different groups, as to what to do next and where they go next. If you know what happens with Gandalf in the last film, the trailer for this film actually absolutely spoiled it with what happens with his character. The characters are just absolutely advanced as well. We follow Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, who now go to pretty much help Merry and Pippin as well. They end up arriving at Rohan and sort of trying to save mankind is what basically what the main mission is. Saruman is basically forming an army with one purpose: to destroy every man, woman, and child, to pretty much rid Middle Earth of mankind, pretty much. And it leads to an absolutely brilliant battle. One of the best battles ever filmed, in my opinion. The use of CG, practical effects, miniatures, and it all looks so brilliant on the screen. The Battle of Helm's Deep is just absolutely superb and flawless. They did top it in the next film. When I do my top films of 2003, I think watching this, you can pretty much guess what my number one was from 2003. But yeah, this was just a perfect sequel. It doesn't feel like a sequel because it's part of a trilogy. It's a middle piece to a story. But yeah, it introduced one of the greatest CG characters as well, with Gollum, played fantastically by Andy Serkis. Just this creature we don't know whether to trust or not, who's just absolutely both in love and has hatred for this ring, which is the main goal and what they're trying to destroy. The music in this is just absolutely on point as well. It's absolutely superb. It's the second part to the greatest fantasy trilogy ever. It's just so good. I can't really praise it enough. The War with the Ents as well is just absolutely fantastic. But yeah, that's really all I can say about it. It's just a second part to a fantastic trilogy. If you like fantasy films, you've already seen it, you know what it's about. It's a trilogy that, demands rewatches. It's just superb. But if it's not your thing, it probably is never going to be. But yeah, and that's my number one pick from 2002. So yeah, if you've seen any of these films, or if you think there's anything I've missed off, let me know. Let me know your thoughts. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and like the video, share, and all that jazz. Comment down below and let me know your thoughts on the films from 2002. So yeah, that being said, I'll say thanks very much for watching, and stay safe and take care.